Welcome to Worship Matters. As we've arrived at the end of our worship service this week, we want to look at the final elements to our service, the final hymn and the benediction. Now, the final hymn is our opportunity to respond to what we've just heard from God's Word. It's our chance to affirm our trust in God's Word and to sing our heart's desire in response to what God has just told us. You know, if we've heard a sermon or if we've heard from God's Word something about the grace of God and the salvation we have in Jesus Christ, then maybe we'd sing a song that magnified Christ and His salvation, like "And Can It Be?" or "All I Have Is Christ." If we've heard about God's care for us in the midst of suffering and trials, maybe we'd sing a song like "It Is Well With My Soul." Or if we've been challenged to a life of obedience, then maybe we would sing a song of dedication like "Take My Life and Let It Be." But the final hymn is our response to what we've heard from God's Word. After the final hymn comes the benediction. Now, the benediction may seem like one of those things that's a formality or a convenient way to end the service so it wraps up nicely. Maybe some even think that the benediction is a great thing to skip so we can beat the traffic on our way out. But the benediction is actually a precious blessing from God. See, the benediction is God's word to us. The benediction is not actually our prayer to Him, but it's God speaking His blessing to us as we leave. Just as God calls us into worship at the beginning of our service, so He sends us out with His blessing at the end of the service. In fact, if we look back to Numbers chapter 6, we see God telling Aaron and his sons to speak a word of blessing over His people, that the Lord would be with them, that His face would shine upon them and His countenance would be upon them to give them peace. And as we read what God says to His people, He says these words of benediction will actually be a means of blessing. He says, when Aaron and his sons pray this prayer, I will bless my people. And so the benediction becomes God's word to us. It becomes a means that God uses to strengthen us and to bless us as we depart from our time of corporate worship. And so far from being a formality or something that we can easily skip, the benediction should be a precious blessing for us as God's people. Well, over the past 10 weeks, we've gone through each element in our worship service, and I've thoroughly enjoyed going through the service with you. I hope it's been beneficial for you as well. As we finish up the summer, I want to take the next 2 weeks to give 2 addendums to this series and talk about other matters of our corporate worship together. So I look forward to seeing you next week.